G'day, May 40 here. I'm listening to Misha Saul's interview with Alexander Makaberitz, author of the Napoleonic Wars.
Good internet. I am absolutely delighted to be speaking to you today. So you jumped on straight away a few moments ago, and you know the way I introduced myself to you was, hey, I was born in Tbilisi. Why don't we chat? And you're like, so tell me about yourself. And we started to kick off, and there was a great end.
So Misha is a thoughtful essayist and podcaster based in Sydney, but he's originally from Tbilisi. He's Jewish, and here he's interviewing a historian who's just published a book on Napoleon.
So I thought, why don't we just press record and maybe we can capture some of that energy. So I think there is an affinity, you know, like it is probably unusual to meet Georgians in the diaspora, broadly speaking, and so like frankly, you know, I think there is a personal layer to this conversation. I know it's also very late for you.
So right now I'm at Custom House, so by Circular Quay in Sydney Harbour, starting to get ready for Chrissy. That's what they call Christmas here, Chrissy. We're in the Central Business District. There's Circular Quay where you catch the wharves, and the Sydney Opera House is just that way. What better time to listen to a podcast about Napoleon, eh?
You just finished a lecture. It's 8 p.m. where you are, so I appreciate you making the time, and I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I was delighted when you sent me an email because I'm always on the lookout for a fellow Georgian, and especially you know, when you told me you were in Australia, I was particularly excited. It's a privilege and an honor to be on your podcast, and look forward to really talking to you about culture, history, and there's a lot of things to discuss.
Yeah, awesome. So I read a fantastic book on Napoleon, which I really enjoyed, and I've got questions on that, but I actually want to start with Georgia.
So the sinister
I know you've
Georgia
written
mafia,
about
yeah.
Georgia as well, and I guess this is probably it's perfect. This is probably a follow-up conversation. I recently, you know, about a year or two ago, I had two new Georgians. They're not ethnic Georgians living in Georgia. You know, a linguist and a historian come on, and we spoke. We had a fantastic conversation about Georgia, and I felt a little bit guilty because they weren't ethnic Georgians, if I'm honest with you. I thought I need to have an Adze or an Idze or a Shvili come on and actually speak about it. So I feel this is a redemptive moment in having you on. So I guess my first question is about Georgia. I've always kind of been baffled that this unique culture, this country with this totally unique language, managed, frankly, to survive, kind of nestled amongst empires, the Russian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, the Persians. How did this happen? A very broad question. How did this happen?
The survival, I guess, right?
Yeah. How do we end up here with this little particular country nestled amongst empires, you know, after thousands of years of you know, giant imperial ambitions around it?
Partly, I mean, it's a complex question requiring kind of a long discussion, but some of it lays in the fact that having this unique identity, unique language, unique culture, and surround.
So a question in the chat, do I miss America? No, because I plan to be back in late January. If I was moving here permanently, I'd probably have some regrets and like, you know, bro, what am I doing? Like, how can I leave the land of the free, the home of the brave? Bro, did you cover up the FTX scam and your thoughts on cryptocurrency in general? I need an economic analysis on that. Well, I went deep on crypto about 2 years ago, and I said it doesn't meet any legitimate needs. I think crypto's a scam. It's unnecessary. It's something that will be used by criminals, and then government's going to crack down on it. So I came hard against crypto 2 years ago. I first did some analysis, spent a few hours reading up on it, and I just didn't see how crypto played a legitimate role. I played around in crypto for like 2 months. I put $500 in. I took like a 15% profit and then got out and never went back. So yeah, I think crypto is bogus. Its primary purpose is for criminals and money laundering. Crypto is a scam, but all the Manosphere clowns push it. Yeah, well, they're clowns. Like the Manosphere, like any insular identity, often attracts people who get increasingly disconnected from wider society, and they are less functional because of it.
And being surrounded by what kind of, we can say, hostile powers forced Georgians to be.
Okay, so Georgian identity sounds a lot like Jewish identity, being surrounded by hostile powers, right, and defining themselves as against those hostile powers.
To a degree, inward looking.
But wait, isn't that the human condition? Like, we all face hostile powers. Like, is there any people or country on earth that has no enemies or faces no existential threat? I don't think so. So the whole primary basis of any group identity is protecting yourself against the other who threatens your existence.
And what you see, especially in the wake of the collapse of the United Georgian Kingdom in the 15th century, we see Georgians kind of defining themselves vis-a-vis others. So, if you are dealing with, let's say,
is there any group that doesn't define themselves primarily against others? Is there any group that just primarily defines themselves on the basis of what's wonderful about their group? Like, in theory, yes, and the propagandists for various groups would say yes, but in practicality, it seems like pretty much everybody primarily defines themselves as opposed to others, particularly those who most threaten them. We don't define ourselves as opposed to others on the other side of the world. We define ourselves as opposed to others who threaten us.
Muslim Ottoman Turks, Muslim Persians, right? What does it mean?
And I think that the more severe the threat to the existence and culture of your own group, the more intense your antipathy will be to these outgroups.
Makes you a Georgian. And one of the books that I'm working on is about Georgian experience in the wider Islamic world, and you see, kind of in writings of the Italian travelers, Spanish diplomats, Venetian reports, you see that Georgians define themselves by what they are not in many respects. So they
Is there anyone who doesn't do that?
Muslims. So religious identity was historically very strong, especially in medieval and early modern Georgia. There is a fascinating passage in Della Valle's great Italian missionary's journal, who visited Iran, and as he was traveling, he and his wife were stopped on the road, and he saw this group of Georgians passing by, and one of the Georgians noticed that Della Valle's wife had a cross, and so they stopped and kind of pointed at the cross, and they said, "Are you a Christian?" Right, in Georgian they were saying, "Are you a Christian?" And she said, yes. And when they said Della Valle, when they records that, they started shouting, "Oh, she's Georgian," even though his wife was not Georgian. So that kind of moment struck me, that to a degree, right, until really modern times, religious identity was very powerful. It went to the core of Georgians. And that is a very kind of complicated issue and painful issue, and a kind of difficult issue, because we know that southwestern parts of Georgia, historic parts of Georgia, came under the Ottoman rule back in 16, right?
So a lot of religious identity is just a cover for ethnic identity. So the rise of Christian nationalism in the United States, for example, is a more socially correct expression of in-group racial identity. So people would often prefer to phrase their identity in terms of religion rather than race, even though it's race that's the bottom line.
Late 15th or 16th century, and they stayed so until part of them until 20th century. Quite a few regions are still part of Turkey, and the local population, of course, converted to Islam. And so I think nowadays, I think one of the challenges that Georgian state faces is that when we talk about nationalism, the nationalism in Georgia is usually understood in the ethnic dimension. So being Georgian.
Of course, nationalism is primarily ethnic. Man, I had everything going here, and then they threw something at me. Okay, so complicated doing all this live streaming. Bye bye for now.